The fifth layer of the Nine Hells is a freezing realm of ice within which cold flames burn. A frozen sea surrounds the layer and its gloomy sky crackles with lightning. Archduke Levistus once betrayed Asmodius and is now encased deep in the eyes of Stygia as punishment. He rules this layer all the same, communicating telepathically with his followers and servants both in the Nine Hells and in the material plane. Today we're going to take the time to delve deep into the iceberg and check into the mind and heart of Levistus, one of the most cunning and charming devils now imprisoned forever in a cage of ice. But first, let's talk of course about our sponsor today. This video is brought to you by Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance. It always makes me happy to see more Dungeons & Dragons games. Dark Alliance is a third-person cooperative action game where you get to explore the snowy wilds of Icewind Dale as the companions of the Hall. You might recognize some of these characters, that is Drizzt Do'Urden from the novels, we got Brenner Battlehammer, King of Mithril Hall, we got Wulfgar, King of the Ragged Barbarians, and Cady Bree, the Chosen of Mieliki. Using these legendary characters, you will fight against goblins, giants, Duergar, and more as you attempt to prevent them from getting access to the legendary artifact Crunchiniban, the Crystal Shard. We talked about Crunchiniban a while back in our 10 coolest magic items in Dungeons & Dragons. It's a really cool evil magical artifact created by the spirit of 7 evil liches, and now the artifact hides in Icewind Dale and a ton of legendary villains are out to find it. That includes of course the mastermind of it all, Levistus, the devil lord of the 5th layer of hell. The game comes out today, so check out the link in the description below and give it a shot. But now, on to the video. So Levistus himself is very interesting within the course of the Devils of the Nine Hells because he is in a lot of ways the most different out of all of them. See, within the Devil Lords we have the monsters, we have the fallen angels, we have the straight up normal looking devils, we have the nasty looking hybrids, we even have a hag, a Devil Lord. But what we don't have is the Grasp of Hell. A charismatic, perhaps funny, approachable, maybe a more normal feeling devil. Now, don't get me wrong, neither Grasp nor Levistus are normal, but charisma is certainly something that many of these Devil Lords just seem to miss. Yet, for all of his charisma, he is the most hated out of all of the Devil Lords. Devils are known to conspire against one another, to betray each other when possible, but to do this, sometimes stronger relationships are forged, alliances are made. Every Devil Lord has an alliance with someone else. They have to survive, because it is just a matter of time until you get backstabbed. Levistus is the only lord who doesn't, and that's curious. Originally, he was extremely close to Asmodius, so much so that he helped Asmodius succeed in his rise to power, and was then granted dominion over Stygia, which was at the time a great boon, considering that Stygia is one of the 2 hells that get access to the river Styx, a fairly beneficial dominion to own. Considering that the other hell is Avernus and you don't really want to be there, hey look, Stygia is really nice. Now, Levistus was known once as a handsome, roguish devil who could sweet-talk his way out of trouble, extremely smart and cunning as well, but now he lays imprisoned in a cage of ice for the rest of time, with all of hell against him. If it wasn't for the fact that he is completely impervious to damage while on this prison, he would have been murdered a long time ago. What exactly happened? When you look at Mordenkinsdum of Foes, which is the only 5th edition book that talks about Levistus, all they say is, quote, Stygia is a frozen wasteland of mysterious origin, a churning murky sea covered in a thick layer of ice. Where the ice gives way to open water, immense icebergs drift on the unpredictable currents. Levistus is trapped within one of these bergs, imprisoned there by Asmodius, for reasons that few can even guess about, end quote. They straight up don't tell you why he was punished. It's interesting because on this very same book, they go further to elaborate on almost every single Devil Lord, but they also just conveniently leave out Levistus. There is no stat block for him, but there are for others. What the hell happened? Have you ever wondered why there isn't a Queen of Hell? A romantic consort of sorts for Asmodius. I mean, even Demogorgon, the Prince of Demons, has love interests. We literally talked about it on his video. I mean, and look at him. If he can do it, anyone can do it. And you guys of course know of all the gods having children all the time. Lolth of course being the ex-wife of Corellon Larethian, the god of elves. Moradin, the god of dwarves, having Bernard True Silver. I mean, this is very common. So why not Asmodius? Well, he did have a wife, actually. Her name was Bensosia. You might not know it because she appeared in 1st edition a long time ago in an official Dungeons & Dragons magazine, and then, well, things happened. It's interesting that they mentioned Glacia in Mordenkinsdum of Foes, who is the daughter of Asmodius and Bensosia, but they don't mention the mother. What happened to her? So there are many different stories, in fact 3 different stories, some with more validity than others, and all of them end with Bensosia being murdered. The story goes that Bensosia at the time, Queen of the Nine Hells, was inspecting Stygia on a form of routine checkup of sorts with her entourage of several Pit Fiends. Levistus ambushed her, killed her escorts, and then attempted to turn her against her husband Asmodius. He figured she might know of a weakness or secret that he could exploit. When she refused, he killed her. Nowadays, the concept of openly betraying Asmodius is pretty foolish, but back then it wasn't. They didn't really know how much power he really had. Now, all they have to do is look at what happened to Levistus to know that rebelling is futile, for his punishment was to remain imprisoned in a block of ice forever. Now, this story appears in Guide to Hell for 1st edition, and in the Book of Vile Darkness for 3rd edition. I believe Frostborn also retells the same story. But now, according to Tyrants of the Nine Hells, Levistus did something else to Bensosia, okay, when she refused. But the gods of monetization shackle me, and so we shall not speak of it. Though all the same, I did ask my contact at Wizards of the Coast, who told me, quote, "The Book of Vile Darkness is a better interpretation of his backstory," end quote. So the info on Tyrants of the Nine Hells appears to not be canon for all it's worth. Now, that being said, things get far more complex, as it is told in Dungeon Magazine number 197 for 4th edition, which so far appears to be the actual canon. Quote, "The story goes that Levistus approached Bensosia as she traveled through Stygia and offered to make her his queen in exchange for helping him overthrow her master. According to the tale, she was true to Asmodius and refused the offer. For this defiance, she and all her Pit Fiends were slain." This story is commonly told throughout the Nine Hells, but it is almost certainly propaganda. Bensosia hated Asmodius. She would never have sacrificed her life out of loyalty to him. If she did in fact refuse Levistus' offer, she must have done so for some other reason. Another tale, whispered far from listening ears, recounts a much different version of events. Bensosia saw in Levistus another chance to weaken Asmodius, and the two had been allies for many years. She traveled to Stygia when she could and whispered secrets to the Lord of the Fifth to give him any advantage possible. Those who tell this story do not believe that anything close to love existed between these conspirators. Each sought to exploit the other for dark purposes. Despite their duplicity, the two managed to keep their tryst going for some time until Glacia discovered them." End quote. See, Levistus was not just sexing the Queen of Hell, but he had a whole other thing going with the Princess of Hell. He was in fact doing the mother and the daughter. Quote, "Levistus, always the dashing scoundrel and rake, stole Glacius' heart during one of his visits to Asmodius' court. Levistus recognized that she might turn even more of Asmodius' household against him, and the two became secret lovers. He knew that he was taking a great risk in doing so. Glacia was young and jealous, and would react violently should she discover his ongoing affair with Bensosia. Similarly, the Queen of Hell would be enraged by Levistus' dalliance with her daughter. Yet, he maintained the ruse for as long as he could." End quote. What happened then was Glacia, the princess, after a nasty clash with her father, ran away and fled Nessus, the ninth layer. She ran towards Stygia in order to become the open, public consort of Levistus, but instead found him in bed with her mother. In anger, when the mother was leaving, Glacia murdered her. Quote, "The Pit Fiend Martinet, also called the Voice of Nessus, was the first to discover the murder. Asmodius had tasked him with enforcing order on the Nine Hells. Not wanting his master to appear weak through his daughter's rash action, Martinet pinned the murder on Levistus. He destroyed the rest of the Pit Fiends with the party, so no other witnesses remained. Though Asmodius did not love Bensosia, he could not let the offense go unpunished. He stripped Levistus of his titles, sealed him in ice, and granted Stygia to Geryon, the wild beast. Following Martinet's advice, Asmodius also sent Glacia away and installed her in Mammon's court to be the Archdevil's concubine." End quote. And that's effectively the story. To this day, Levistus still sits there, frozen solid, waiting for any possible chance to escape, and Glacia also sits obsessed with Levistus, but instead of wanting him out of love, she just really wants to kill him, or more precisely, eat his heart, which is how she would put it. Now, this is a picture of how Levistus used to look like before he was frozen, basically a suave guy with a goatee. He's described as being almost human looking if it wasn't for his sharp black eyes and his pointed teeth. He used to wield a rapier as a weapon and was considered to be incredibly fast and dexterous. In fact, the lore actually says that nobody could defeat him one-on-one, that he was the best duelist on Hell. To satisfy any kind of wrongdoing or issue he had, he would simply perform trials by combat where the other party would simply fight him one-on-one. They would of course all die and he would always win because he was just that good. His technique was defensive in nature, where he would parry a lot and learn the moves of his opponents. He was so good at this actually that he could even parry spells. Now, many people might not know this actually, but the reason why Asmodius chose to petrify him in ice as a punishment wasn't even as some kind of symbol of what happens if you defy me. It was supposed to be an ironic punishment since Levistus was well known for his speed, finesse, and agility, and now, well, he will be known forever as, well, the opposite of that. The one thing he loved to do the most had been taken away from him. This is actually a very common type of punishment that Asmodius loves doing. For example, as part of his punishment, Levistus must accept anyone who asks him for help in escaping. In particular, escaping dangerous situations. So, if you're about to die in a battle, or if you're stuck in a dungeon room where the walls are closing in on you, if you're willing to pledge your soul to Levistus, he has to help you escape. Again, ironic because it is the one thing he of course cannot do. Now, if you're curious, Levistus has the power to teleport you within a mile of where you are currently into a safe location and then heal you of your wounds. It's pretty cool stuff. Now, since we're on this topic, I should also mention that warlocks or priests of Levistus don't even look like clerics. They basically just look how Levistus used to look. They wear simple silk clothing and use rapiers. They are called blade reavers and really just look like swashbucklers. So if you're a warlock of Levistus, like, this is technically how you're supposed to do it. However, by following him, you would get access to a really broken spell called Bind to Hell, a spell unique to followers of Levistus. As you can see here, it is a 5th level spell with a 1-hour casting time that effectively, well, permanently banishes a person. As part of the spell, you specifically name or describe the person and then strike it with your blade. If the creature is reduced to 10 or less hit points, it is then banished to Stygia permanently or until rescued. What happens here is that the soul of the banished target gets sent to hell and made to inhabit a frozen representation of itself. Now, the cool thing is that those in Stygia can actually animate those frozen effigies of those banished this way, and they do that to fight them for fun. They sometimes make arenas where they find the most powerful looking frozen soul and then fight them to test themselves. The only way to free these frozen souls would be to then take their souls out of hell, at which point they would go into their normal heaven and then they would be able to be resurrected like normal. Otherwise, only a wish spell could basically save them. It is actually a very broken spell for just being 5th level, to be honest. Now, with Levistus being frozen solid and being as cunning as he has had all the time in the world to conspire and plan for his future release. The interesting thing is that because he is on a grand iceberg, he is effectively untouchable. I mean, he is literally the only devil that does not have to worry about being backstabbed, and so he basically takes no shit from nobody, basically. He conspires against everybody, and his favorite way of obtaining servants is by stealing them from other devil lords, which has granted him great enmity from everybody. Because he literally has nothing else to do, he just collects and hoards souls. He spends every waking minute just thinking about how to collect more souls, and then he basically entices devils with banquets of souls to get them on his side. If you ever wanted to interact or deal with Levistus, just know that he resides on the 5th layer of hell known as Stygia, what is believed to be a whole realm made out of water, with most of it of course being frozen solid since it is a cold realm. Levistus himself floats on an iceberg about half a mile across, close to the most populated city in the layer called Tantlin. It is a harbor city constructed on top of one of the biggest icebergs on the layer, and it is considered to be a good spot for trading because of course it floats by the river Styx. Now, if the harbor town is close to the river Styx, and Levistus himself floats close to the city, does that mean yes? Levistus does float on the river Styx, which is actually kind of cool. Though I should clarify that it does not happen all the time. Levistus just kind of floats wherever the currents go, and Asmodius actually has full control over the currents. So every once in a while, Levistus floats into the Styx, but then other times he just floats around the icy oceans of Stygia. Now, that being said, being in control of this layer and having such proximity over the river Styx has granted Levistus some incredible powers typically associated with the river. Levistus, with a single touch, can actually produce a potent form of amnesia that can force you to forget everything about your life. Not that he can really touch you, obviously, while inside of his prison, but it is worth mentioning that it is one of his most powerful abilities. One of his favorite ways to torment souls back when he was walking was to make them forget and then watch them struggle. Now, I would like to personally thank my Patreon supporters Barry Mascan, 5e Magic Shop, Morgan Johnson, Rusty Rain, Doc Feeder, Walker Motley, The Great Codini, Terry Culp, Xiran King, Omega Scales, Ozol, Alex Cookson, Benjamin Bosters, Falky951, Ordoric, Prince Daylight Morning Crown, Sabim Kurshap, Solarensis, Thomas Hunt, Bushido Burrito, Nathan McCumb, Soulless Rider, Werewolven Games, Lost Crusader, Mr. Salty, Stalia, Brian Kemp, Shadaga, Stephen, JD Green, Olaf Klepp, Treb909, Tony RC, Famine52, George Fortland, Sovereign Mind, Trevor Hess, Draglogia5, The Living Guild Pack, Michael Walker, Streeblow, Describe, Herbert Johnson, The Wizard's Vault, Dragon19, Guy97, James the Perverted, Shoddycast, Hiram at Questing Under Their Influence Podcast, Horror Bound, and Jeffrey A. Alexander for supporting me on Patreon. Wait, we got more. Oh, I have a second page. Oh my goodness. Oh my god. Jesse Feliciano and Anikon the Wolf of Shadows for supporting me on Patreon at the $25 level. This list is just keeps getting longer and longer. This is gonna be so tough to do at some point. If you guys want to support me as well, then head on over to patreon.com/MrRex to support. Alright guys, thank you for a second time for watching. Make sure to like and comment on the video. It really helps out, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.